Hello everybody, my name is Frank Gars. I'm the facilitator of this session from Christopher Bouveret, who will talk about UI5 App and UI5 App, creating UI5 Apps.
Exactly.
Interesting.
All right, so let's get started. Welcome everyone. First question, who was at the last UI5Con in Frankfurt? Oh, you were? Okay, so you might have got a glimpse of what I will show you today. We were mentioned in the top 5 UI5 apps, and why is that? Another question, who likes coding UI5 apps? Yeah, there we go. All right, well, we do as well. We love coding UI5 apps, and we did that for a long time. And we were always looking for ways to make this simpler. And so it's all about simplifying. And another question, who's familiar with the term low-code? Nobody? So yeah, I guess that's because you're developers. Basically, low-code means configuring instead of coding a lot. So we came up with an idea to create a platform basically to generate UI5 apps. And the good thing is this platform is not just generating UI5 apps, it's also built on UI5. So, and now to show you a little bit more besides talking, let me just share my screen real quick. So what you can see here is basically, you can see it, yeah, it will be up in a second, I guess. There we go. All right, so we basically created a web-based platform. We call it a low-code platform that enables one to basically generate applications. Not just that, we also have an integration layer, we call those connectors. And basically what you see here, the whole thing is, the whole user interface is built on UI5. Under the hood we use Scala for developing this application. And so it kind of reminds one of the Fiori Launchpad, but it's not. And why did we do that? Basically we were building a whole bunch of UI5 apps and they were all spread around in different repositories, and we were having a hard time managing them, and they were not in one single place. If you create standalone apps, you might know that problem. So basically, we try to come up with a solution that is a single source of truth in that case, where you can create your applications, you can maintain the applications there, and you can also create all kinds of interfaces to backend systems on this platform. So because I don't have that much time today, I will focus on the two parts that are the major core functionalities. So one is applications and the other is connectors. So when talking about generating UI5 apps, since it's model-based, it is very nice to generate basically. So let's look at the applications part of it, and I will use a simple application to show you how this is working out. So basically you can see all the applications that I have access to based on my roles and rights here. So I'm just going to use the Simplifier Explored app. And as you can see, we've been using a whole bunch of UI5 controls, and we built a whole lot of custom controls for that. So let me just copy that real quick for the UI5Con demo. There we go. Okay. There's my application. So first thing is, I can edit applications, I can copy them, and I can also create releases of the application. So this comes in very handy if you change an application, you want to create a new release. So we integrated our own release management system into that. I can also, at any time, preview the application in the browser. Nothing fancy here. I can also use the Google DevTools to simulate mobile devices. So what you can basically see here is a very easy UI5 application with a few buttons that I can use and to navigate through my application to access different functionalities that the platform provides. So to talk about a little bit more about integration, let me give you one example here. This is actually pulling up a functional location from our SAP demo system. So if I do that, it just loads the data. You can see it is populated in the input fields right here. So very straightforward application. Another thing, a little more complex, where we populate the table. Also here, very easy example. So that's how the application looks like. And I bet each of you could create this application by hand easily. But our approach is more less coding, more configuration. So let's look at the application itself. So if I edit the application, I have basically 4 major parts. The first thing is the UI designer. So I create my screens here. I have controls on the left side. We call them widgets. And I can show you a little later how those are created and how you can basically integrate your own custom controls with that. But what we do is we create the screens for the application. So you can see this application is pretty easy. It has a navigation screen and then a whole bunch of other screens for all the detail pages that I can navigate to. And there's a whole lot more to it. We can translate the application. We can integrate all kinds of JavaScript libraries in there. We can upload UI5 themes to theme the application. And as you see, all the controls that I add here, for example, in my navigation screen, for example, a button as a control has properties that I can configure here. And again, I will show you the widget customizer where we can create those elements, and then everything will be customizable here on the right side. And also this button, for example, has an event, in that case 2 events. And I could go ahead and basically script my event here, whatever should happen when I push that button. I can use JavaScript for that, which I will not do, but I could as well flag this event for use in the process designer, and that's what I'm about to show you now. So as soon as I've flagged something, an event of any control, I can jump to the process dashboard and create user stories. So what we do is we basically, when we create applications, we write user stories first, and then developers basically translate those user stories into code, and afterwards there's the code, but the user stories are not in the code itself, and are not obviously in the application. So just one example of that, if I, for example, choose this user story, it's described in the form of a user story. If I edit that, we will jump into the process designer. And the process designer basically is a custom control that we added on top of the UI5 library that we use to build the Simplifier itself. And here you can see different activities. For example, the activity I flagged, if I choose an activity as an event, I get all the events that are actually flagged for usage in the process designer. So I could, for example, use the device button press event, and I could use a navigation activity that shows me the screens of my application. I could say, okay, whenever I push the device button, I want to navigate to the device screen. So that's all there is to it, basically, to create a navigation based on a button click without writing one single line of code. The other good thing is, and you might be familiar with that problem, if I write an application and it needs to be changed in a year, and I'm not in the company anymore, for example, and one of my colleagues needs to change it, developers hate that. Well, I do. I don't know about you, but it's not nice to basically extend or change code that someone else wrote. So by basically providing this standardized way of how applications are created, we can get rid of that problem, and it helped us a lot creating applications faster and more sustainable for later usage, especially when there's change requests. For example, this user story-based approach is helping a lot to find the right part of the application where I need to look at and where I need to do changes, for example. Everything that I do here in the UI designer and in the process dashboard or process designer generates code, of course. That's what today's session is all about, the UI5 app that generates UI5 apps. So what you can see here in the code designer, it's a very slim web-based IDE where I can look at the code that is generated. So most of you might be familiar with the patterns and the files that are in there. The only thing I can't do is basically change the code here and then go on and configure in the UI designer, but it's more like showing what is generated and how the pattern looks like and so on, because our approach is more on configuration instead of coding. So when we look at the application here and at this little connector example here where I push the button to load data, let me jump into the process dashboard where actually this happens. So I'm going to go to the connector features and jump into the process designer for that. So basically what you see here, as soon as I push the connector button on my first screen, I will navigate to the connector screen. And then on this screen, if I push the little button up here, the load data button, also I'm reacting on the event that I flagged, I'm calling a data object. And data objects can be basically interfaces to backend systems. We call those connectors. It is kind of similar to the API manager or to what Meredith just told in the co-talking APIs with UI5. So this one is an example where we pull up a functional location. So I've configured a connector, and each connector has several calls. In that case, it's a read call. And of course, my connector needs an input mapping. So what you can see here is how we visually map input parameters. So on the right side, you can see that my destination, in that case, our SAP demo system, is expecting the ID of the functional location. On the left side, I have all my user interface elements, the controls ordered by screens. In that case, I'm going to go ahead and use the input field with the ID TP-ID, and I'm going to just, if I want to connect something, I just pull it from the left side, pull the input parameter from the right side and hook those two together. That's all there is to it to basically define my input mapping. And then, of course, this connector delivers data, so I have an output mapping, and this looks kind of messed up, but I'm going to rearrange it real quick so that it looks a little nicer. So same here, on the left side, I have the output parameters that my backend system is giving me back, and those are named because we aliased them, and I can show you that in a couple of minutes, how the connector is configured. And on the right side, we have, again, all the input, all the user interface elements ordered by screens. Same procedure, so I'm going to go ahead and take the name, for example, from the left side and drag it in here, which I already did in that case, and then I just hook it up to the user interface elements, in that case my input fields, where the data should end up. And if I save that, basically that's all there is to it. If I do need to write code, or if I want to write code, we have a script activity here that I can always use to basically extend my application with JavaScript code. In that case, it's just a console log that I use, so I could go ahead and get rid of this as well, and just save the application, deploy it. It will be saved on the platform itself, and then I can go ahead and preview it again, which will open up the browser and show me the application. So this is what happens when I push the load data. So here's the functional location. So let's look at that connector that I'm using here with the data object activity. So going to the connectors and looking, searching for SAP in that case. Let me show you first what types of connectors one can use. So if I create a new connector, I have a whole bunch of connector types. So basically, you might be familiar with most of those protocols. Some are kind of exotic, like OPC UA or MQTT. But the ones that we use most are, of course, REST SOAP or SAP RFC. You might be familiar with that as well. Or even connection to SQL data is pretty straightforward. So I can basically configure my connector here, and then go ahead and create the endpoint and so on. But let me just show you the one that I used in the application, and it's this one. So you can see it's a type of connector SOAP. It has two connector calls. So if I click on this small phone icon here, I can see the connector calls that are actually configured for that. I can see also the number of input parameters and output parameters that are used. In that case, we're using the bus 0010 read, and I can describe that. And as well, if I now want to test this connector call, I can punch in a functional location name in that case, and just click the test button. And then what happens is basically I get an empty result, but you can see the result set here. So this comes in very handy when trying to test connectors or connector calls. And how this is configured, also some of you might be familiar with that. So every connector call has input and output parameters. In that case, we have an operation name, we have our SOAP binding, the binding name. I can also choose data types for those input parameters and the output parameters. And you've seen in the process designer that I was using speaking names like name, street, city, and description. We can basically alias those parameters here, those SAP parameters, so that the user that creates the app doesn't have to care and doesn't have to know about the parameter names that can be very cryptic in some cases. So, and that's all there is to it, to basically create that connector and configure it. And then I can save and test it again. Let me try a different one. Maybe we'll get some data back. Yeah, there we go. So that's another functional location. You can now see from the SAP demo system there's some data coming up. So my connector call is working, and I can basically now go ahead and use this connector call in my application, going back to the UI5Con demo application that I just created using a copy of the Simplifier Explored app, and then going to the process dashboard again, to the connector part of it. I can see that this data object here is calling this connector and this connector call, and I've already shown you how the input and output mapping is working. So the goal behind that is basically to simplify the way people can interact with backend data without even having to know how the backend system works and what kind of data it is actually delivering, and they don't have to care about cryptic names as well if the connector is configured correctly. It is very straightforward and easy to use, because the goal is also to enable non-developers to create applications, and so that's the way we simplify that in that case. I talked a lot about custom controls and that we call widgets, so let me show you that as well. Too bad. I have not the rights to do that, so I need to change real quick. Sorry for that. Alright, so going to the applications, there's a widget list, so basically I can pull up an easy example of a button. So let's look at this button widget here. Actually, it's a control. So if I look into that, I can see that there's a UI5 representation of it. You can see that we're using Moustache template engine to basically make this all configurable. We've heard about that this morning at UI5Con already, using Moustache templates. And then I can basically define all the properties here that I want to have in the UI designer being configurable. I can also define the events. And up here you can see that we're not just generating UI5 apps, we're also tapping into Angular and Angular 2. So the goal is basically to have one representation of a user interface element, and then you can choose in which user interface framework, UI5 or Angular, the application should be delivered. And this comes in really handy. So Angular 2 is kind of new. So this button, for example, has not a representation for Angular 2, but it does have one for Angular 1. So you can see here, that's the Angular representation of it. But I'm not going to talk too much about Angular today because we're at UI5Con, and so we're focusing on UI5 in that case. So you can see we can basically inherit from the standard controls that UI5 delivers, and then we can make this control configurable so that it will show up in the UI designer where we were before. So in that list on the left side, I can also search for that. So let's look at that button. And if I use that button, for example, and just add it to my first screen, there's the button again, and there's 2 minutes left, so I'm just right on time. Let me just save this real quick, and maybe I can manage to show you the change. So I added a button to it, and it should show up. No, it doesn't. Why doesn't it? Because it's not in the center layout. So there's the button right there. Could be a caching column as well, but let's try that again. Oh, there we go. There is it. So caching problem, I added it to the vertical layout, so it should show up in a couple of minutes under that, but we don't have that time. So in that very short time, I hope I could give you some insights on that platform. If you want, we prepared a demo account for everyone that wants to try this out. So if you're interested in that, please approach me after the talk, and I'll be glad to give you access to the platform. We're very keen on getting your feedback. We're a whole bunch of UI5 developers, and we really love UI5, and we hope that this tool might resonate with one or the other of you guys. So thanks a lot, and thanks for the attention, and I hope you liked it.